Hello movie lovers, we're back onto the Spielberg train. I am ranking each of Steven Spielberg's classic films over the coming months. In fact, I'm doing that with some of my favourite directors. So if you haven't seen this channel before, make sure you subscribe because I'll be looking at and ranking the films of some of my favourite directors, including Ingmar Bergman, Steven Spielberg, of course, David Lynch. No, I've already done David Lynch. In fact, you can find my full ranking of his films in the links below. Who else am I looking at? Kubrick. I'll be looking at Kubrick, and Billy Wilder. I'll be looking at him as well. So yeah, plenty to be getting on with. But today it's all about Spielberg, and I'm looking at another of his most memorable films of the noughties, which is his version of War of the Worlds, which I sat down and rewatched last night. Let me tell you a little bit about the film and what I thought about it. H.G. Wells' classic gets the noughties treatment in this lavish and well-directed science fiction film from Spielberg. Tom Cruise is back playing a divorced dad whose kids hate him, but is forced into a situation where he has to grow as a father, protector and parent when the Martians take over. The kids are quite annoying at times, as is Tom Cruise's rather incompetent dad, but overall the sense of suspense and terror is palpable throughout and the effects still stand up extremely well. It's always interesting with each adaptation of War of the Worlds to ruminate on what the alien threat really represents, as the best versions tend to tap into the wider fears of the culture that they are presented at, I find. In the original book, which was written in sort of Victorian times, the threat in that one was the seemingly inhuman rise of industry and machinery in Victorian Britain. In the 1950s version, which I would definitely check out if you haven't seen, it would have been the real threat of Russia in the Cold War. And of course, in the 2000s, people's fears were heightened by the very real threat of terrorism in the aftermath of 9/11. And you can really feel this throughout. There's certain parts of the film that just feel so much like that fear that people had in the early noughties, and some of that footage of the day of 9/11. There's even bits like where they're running through the streets and they're covered in like dust from concrete from the buildings falling. And if you've seen, and a lot of it is kind of, and well, not a lot of it, but there are some scenes that are done through someone's camcorder. I thought when you see people running through the streets covered in concrete dust and filmed in a camcorder, it's almost identical to the footage that you see on those documentaries about 9/11. And being of a certain age and having lived through those times, I can definitely relate to the fear that we all had. I think it's just 4 years after that this film came out, and it was very much still in people's minds at the time. In fact, there's both the kids, I think, throughout say, is it terrorists? Is it terrorists? You know, that's the first thing that they go to when they hear about the alien invasion. What I find the scariest aspect of this film, and all the versions really of War of the Worlds, is how quickly society breaks down. People turn on each other almost immediately. Yeah, as the family are desperately trying to survive against increasingly hopeless odds. The bit where they're driving in the car and everyone's trying to get it off them, and how it descends into like a riot is just, it's quite disturbing to see how quickly society turns on itself when facing these odds. I always find that quite the scariest part of the book, really, even more scary than the aliens themselves. This is Spielberg at his biggest, most epic spectacle. I didn't find the characters quite as, I wasn't rooting for them quite as much as I do for some of, like, say, the kids in Jurassic Park, for example, but they all do a pretty good job. Tom Cruise plays Tom Cruise extremely well in it. It's an excellent retelling of a classic tale with a modern twist. I say modern, it's like, I always think of this as like the new version of War of the Worlds, even though it's from 2005, so it's actually 21 years old by now. So that's when you know you're getting old. But I think out of the two, I probably slightly prefer the 50s version. But there's enough that separates them to make them both worth watching for sure. This is where I'm going to put it on my ranking of Spielberg films I've seen so far. What do you think? Is this where you would put it on your own ranking of Spielberg's films? I'd love to know in the comments below. Yeah, I did enjoy it. It's still quite low on my list at the moment, but I think that's because I've still so many Spielberg films to watch. So yeah, let me know where you'd rank it, what you think of the film, and what is your favourite Spielberg film in the comments below. I'd love to hear your comments. And I'd love to get you along on this journey. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel for more retro movie reviews in the future. All right, thanks for watching and take care.